What if the people you argue about every day don't matter at all, and the ones shaping your life are people you will never see? If you want to know who runs the world, don't look at the people who are loud, the faces you know, the billionaires you follow, the celebrities you argue about online. They are not the authors of this story. They are the actors. While you're busy watching their posts, their divorces, their scandals, their jets, someone you've never heard of is already designing the next crisis, and the solution they'll sell you afterward. The truly rich don't want your attention, they want your obedience, and that's exactly why you never see them. You see the same names over and over again, the same billionaires, the same tech icons, the same influencers. You think, wow, these are the people on top. No, these are the people on display. The modern world needs characters, loud billionaires, controversial CEOs, scandalous celebrities. They keep you entertained, outraged, distracted. They're shiny decoys. While the internet watches a billionaire's tweet, giant asset managers quietly move trillions. While you're busy debating a celebrity's dress, anonymous holding companies are buying up land, media, infrastructure. You know the faces, you don't know the owners. The most efficient way to hide power is to put something louder in front of it. The stage lights are there for a reason, so you never see who's standing in the dark at the edge of the curtain, deciding what the show will be about. People imagine the powerful as flashy, arrogant, always in the spotlight. That's not power. That's ego. Real power is allergic to exposure. The truly rich don't want followers. They don't want viral clips. They don't want their name trending. They want optionality. They want zero trace. They want a world where they can move without being seen moving. So they build layers, foundations instead of personal ownership, trusts instead of simple accounts, holding companies inside other holding companies, directors, nominees, proxies, faces that can be replaced. You see the CEO. Behind the CEO is a board. Behind the board is a fund. Behind the fund is a trust. Behind the trust is nothing you can Google. By the time you try to follow the trail, you're looking at a law firm in one country, a mailbox in another, and a regulation written by people they paid 3 years ago. You were never meant to see the end of that trail. Let me be very clear about something. Invisible power doesn't operate by commanding. It operates by shaping the environment so that everyone else makes the right decision on their own. No threats, no orders, no meetings you'd recognize from movies. Just incentives, just pressure, just timing. A regulation gets delayed, a competitor loses funding, a media narrative shifts tone, a risk suddenly feels too risky. No single action looks powerful, but the pattern is unstoppable. That's how invisible power survives scrutiny, because you can never point to one moment and say, that's where it happened. It happens everywhere, quietly, gradually, legally. And by the time consequences show up in your life, the decision is already years old. Being unknown is not a weakness. It's their strongest layer of armor. You can protest against someone you can name. You can tax wealth you can measure. You can regulate companies you can see. But you cannot attack a ghost. If the richest person in a country doesn't appear on any list, if their ownership is buried 10 layers deep in offshore structures, if their influence is executed through intermediaries and independent entities, who do you blame? Who do you question? Who do you drag in front of a camera? No one. The public will always fight what is visible. The politician in front of the microphone, the CEO at the press conference, the influencer selling a lifestyle. That's the beauty of the design. The anger never reaches the architect. It dies on the glass of the screen. The wealth you see is just decoration. The wealth you can't see is the one making decisions. And the less you understand how it works, the safer it is from you. You think you're just scrolling. You're not. You're reporting. Every like, every pause, every replay, every search is a signal. When you're tired, when you're lonely, when you're angry, what you fear, what you want, who you envy. You live in a world where your digital reflection is more valuable than your physical one. Gold was the old currency. Oil was the last one. Today's currency? Your attention, your behavior, your predictability. You think social media is freedom of expression. It's a surveillance grid you enter voluntarily. Your reactions get turned into data. The data gets turned into models. The models get turned into decisions. Not just for ads, for narratives, for policy, for what you'll be outraged about next month. They don't need to guess how you'll react. They can simulate it. And who owns the platforms, the data centers, the ad networks, the infrastructure? Not the people you follow, people you've never heard of. You insist you're in control of your decisions. They design the menu you're allowed to choose from. Here's the trap most people never escape. You believe awareness equals freedom. That if you know what's happening, you're somehow protected. You're not. Awareness without leverage is just anxiety. You still wake up inside their systems. You still work inside their economies. You still communicate on platforms they own. You still depend on infrastructures they influence. You can see the cage, but you can't step out of it. And that's intentional. Because a population that feels informed but remains structurally dependent is far more stable than one that is ignorant. You're allowed to complain. You're allowed to discuss. You're allowed to argue endlessly online, as long as none of it interferes with execution. Look at how the cycle works. A scandal, a breakup, a billionaire's controversial statement, a viral clip, a new outrage. You think this is chaos. It's not. It's saturation. Your attention span is limited, so they overload it. You are constantly reacting to timelines, to headlines, to trends, to fights that aren't even yours. When you're always reacting, you never have the space to ask the only important question: who benefits from me being this distracted? While you chase the latest topic, the real rich are executing plans that took 10, 20, 30 years to mature. They buy the platforms on which you argue. They finance the media you quote. They fund the think tanks that coin the phrases you repeat. You think you're participating in the conversation. You're walking through a script they wrote. The visible rich are not your enemy. They're your entertainment. The invisible rich are not your hero. They're your architect. Every system learns how to absorb resistance. Protest movements get monetized. Counterculture gets branded. Rebellion becomes a product. Anger becomes engagement. Even opposition becomes fuel. That's why nothing ever seems to change, no matter how loud the outrage gets. Because visibility is not disruption. Disruption happens quietly, before narratives are formed, before choices appear, before you're invited to react. By the time you're angry, the system is already protected. That's the final advantage of invisibility. You can't fight what you can't locate, and you can't locate what was designed to never be seen in the first place. Every day you log in. You share your mood, your opinions, your fears. You mark your location, your habits, your desires. They don't have to spy on you. You happily update them. They know what you thought yesterday. They have a good idea what you'll think tomorrow. And they can gently push you the rest of the way. Meanwhile, you don't even know their names. That is not an accident. That is the point. Because if you can't see who shapes your reality, you can't question them. You can't reject them. You can't hold them responsible. You can only keep playing your role in a story someone else outlined long before you were born. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "Look how rich they are," about someone with a jet, a watch, a yacht, and 50 million followers, remember, the real rich don't want to be seen. They don't want your applause. They don't want your love or your hate. They want one thing, for you to keep believing that the people on stage are the ones in control. Because the moment you start asking, "Who wrote this show?" you stop being just another member of the audience. And that, for them, is the only real threat. If this video made you think, if it showed you a world you always felt was real but no one ever dared to explain, then you're exactly where you need to be. Fake-off luxury isn't about admiration, it's about revelation. We uncover the systems the elite will never discuss and reveal what luxury really means behind the curtain. If you're ready to see more, subscribe, give it a like, turn on notifications, and stay with us. Because in this world, those who know the rules play a completely different game.